This is the Mental Metal Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. And I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Metal Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. Hello and welcome back to the Mental Metal Podcast. I am your host, Coach Thomann, and I have an excellent show for you this week. This week we're going to be discussing something a little bit different. We're going to be discussing the connection between mental toughness and religion, and specifically Christianity in this case. You don't have to spend much time watching sports on television to see a Bible verse on a shoe or on a tattoo, and you'll often hear athletes praising God after a victory, in the post-game, things like that. And you don't have to look long. It's very prevalent in our society. And it should not be surprising, really. Bible verses give us focus, and they give us an intentional mindset, which are all good things for mental toughness. And it gives us the ability to compete with the belief that God is on our side, and it gives us confidence to play with, and all good things for mental toughness, like I said. And many of the athletes I work with have a strong belief in God and reference this in our sessions often. My coaching practice isn't necessarily faith-based, but I am. So that means that if it comes up, we definitely lean into that with the conversation. I bring up values sometimes, or spirituality and religion and values on how important it is. And if it is, then we go for, we use that and we go for it. I've noticed that clients that tend to have a strong faith in their religion often have an easier time believing in the struggle and the eventual progress that they see. They believe that that's all part of the plan, just as I do. Belief in a higher power helps an individual eventually have more belief in themselves. That's just from my experience and the athletes I've been working with. But I feel that personally as well. That's a big deal for me. For me, there's been two Bible verses that I use in my adult life. The first one was one that I had always had posted on my bulletin board when I was a teacher. It wasn't for show or anything. It was more there for me as a subtle reminder. And it was always Colossians 3:23, which says that whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as if working for the Lord and not human masters. And again, that gave me guidance on how I should operate during the day. It had me reminding myself that it's okay to work hard, it's okay to chase things, but it's a really good, you should be doing it as though you're working for God. And it also gave me, it helped me remember not to be too worried about what others were thinking, which is always a good idea for your own mental health. The other verse that I used more recently to help me through some stuff was Psalm 16:8, which says, "I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With Him at my right hand, I will not be shaken." And this was a verse that started to mean a lot to me. I commissioned my mom to paint a sign for me that is still in my bedroom to this day. It helped me get through the recovery on my stroke and through my cancer, and it helped me stay focused and stay confident, knowing that it was a mental picture for me that I could keep going and keep my eyes focused on the Lord, and knowing He was right there at my right hand to help me. And it still helps me, and if the situation calls for it, I I lean into that and I really use that. And I love to ask, how clients use that kind of idea in the same way. And this idea of sharing that idea with clients on how to use verses and how to use religion to help them through stuff is an idea that's very similar to the way that my guest today coaches basketball. His name is Kramer Soderberg, and he is the head coach at Millikin University in Decatur, Illinois, which just happens to be my alma mater. It is a NCAA Division III school, and I know Coach Soderberg from, it was a fortuitous meeting. My son and I were headed to an AAU game in St. Louis, and I saw Coach Soderberg, who I didn't know he was the coach at the time. He was a newly appointed coach, and he was wearing the old big blue emblem on his chest. And I thought, well, I'll go. He's a Millikin guy. I'll go talk to him. And one thing led to another, and he watched Lane play and recruited him some, and it became a friendship now that I still talk to Coach Soderberg often, and great guy. And when I started this podcast, I thought, well, this would be a great connection for me to get somebody on. I thought at first this would be a fantastic opportunity for me to interview a NCAA Division III head coach, because Division III basketball and Division III sports overall it's a different mindset. You're not being paid to play, as they say. It's definitely they put the student and student athlete. It's a big part of it. So I thought it'd be a fantastic interview and a fantastic discussion that I will still have at some point, maybe with him or maybe with a different Division III coach, but because that's a great talk about mental toughness. But in getting to know Coach Soderberg, I realized he was an author, and he has written a book called Fill Your Cup for Christ, and I read it. It is about some of his struggles, his passion for Jesus Christ, and it, how that applies to coaching. And I thought, when I read that, I thought I would be remiss not to take that opportunity to discuss how Christianity affects mental toughness in athletes. We see it so often that it has to play a factor for some athletes and for some coaches, and you'll see in this interview it definitely does for Coach Soderberg. So it's a great interview, so stick around, listen to me and Coach Soderberg talk about religion and athletics and the mental toughness behind it. He's a coach's kid, first of all. He's a successful athlete, successful coach, an author, but most importantly, as he would tell you, he is a Christian. So stick around. Interview coming up next. In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experience depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where mental medal coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Medal Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Medal Coaching and see them excel. Coaches, you love to practice plays, drill defense, and develop physical skills. But what about mental toughness? Well, mental toughness can be drilled like any other skill. And at the Mental Medal Academy, coaches can learn how. Learn and teach mental toughness with your activities and drills. Visit the link in the show notes and enter METTLE, that's METTLE, for a special listener discount. We are back with the Mental Medal Podcast, and my guest today is Millikin men's basketball head coach Kramer Soderberg. A little bit about Coach Soderberg and his background, if you will. He's been a assistant at Millikin University, a Division III school in Decatur, Illinois, and my alma mater. I've got to put that out the gate. I played at Millikin. It's been a few years ago. He was an assistant there. Before that, he was an assistant at Lindenwood University. And you played at Lindenwood, is that correct? Yes.
Yep.
And you assisted and played for your dad, who's a very successful coach in his own, very successful coach as well. And you were a standout player in high school from St. Charles, Missouri.
Yep.
Is that correct? Yeah. So a lot of background here. And Coach Soderberg is also author of the book. You'll see it there over his shoulder there. Fill Your Cup. It's Fill Your Cup for Christ is the name of the book. I read that this weekend. And that really led me to be called to change the topic a little bit. What I really wanted to talk about was I've had some conversations with various coaches, Division II level, Division I level and stuff. And there's just such a different mentality about being a Division III athlete. They put the student and student athlete, if you want to put it that way. And I really wanted to talk about that. And maybe we can at a different time. But after reading his book, I was really got called to change up the topic a little bit, to the point that the new topic is beyond Philippians 4:13 on a shoe. How can Christianity increase a player's mental toughness? And if you don't know what I mean on the Philippians 4:13, it is probably easily the most quoted and most written verse that athletes put on shoes. Whatever and if you're not familiar, it is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, which is, it's a great verse. I think sometimes it gets taken out of context. I don't think that it means, we can make you, make you Michael Jordan just because, you want to be. That's what makes that verse somewhat fun, or it's interesting. But I really wanted to tap into your knowledge base, Coach. You've written a book about Christianity, and you are also now a basketball coach. And as I said, I would be remiss not to talk about that, because I think that's such a interesting part of sports today, and how it can affect a person's mentality. And I've got a whole host of questions, but I just want you to welcome and give me your first thoughts on this topic, Coach.
Yeah, thanks for having me. First and foremost, great to be here. Like you said, with a fellow Millikin guy and a Millikin alum, always good to be on. But yeah, anytime I can talk, one, about sports and the sport that I love in basketball, and then two, combine it with the thing that's most important in my life, which is my faith in Jesus Christ, I'm always excited to do so. So I was thrilled about the topic change and ready to roll. But yeah, I think it's, all of us know that sports transcend life, in that, anybody who's been involved with sports knows that everything that you learn when competing from an athletic perspective is going to translate to every aspect of your life, whether it's professional or personal or whatever. But at the same time, I think the Christian message, the gospel itself, is so intertwined with what we do as athletes that I think it's such a good topic. And, you see throughout all of the New Testament, especially in Paul's writings, how often he relates the athletic world to the Christian life, and then also the Christian life to the athletic world. And I think that's why, as Christians, we can take so much of our faith life and incorporate it into that, into the pursuits that we have from an athletic perspective and beyond in our lives.
Yeah, and again, we see it a lot in today's culture. It's sometimes we see it on display, sometimes we don't. But either way, as a Christian and a Christian coach, like, you notice it one way or the other. You notice it. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing, your playing, and and how that plays into your faith, but playing for your dad and how that affected the way you operate now.
Yeah. So, as a coach's kid, my dad's been a college coach my whole life since the day I was born, and he's been all through the college atmosphere. When I was young, he started at Loras College as a head coach, so he was in the Division III world. Then we moved to South Dakota. He was in the Division II world when South Dakota State was still Division II. We went to Wisconsin, where he was the assistant coach at a high-level program with the Badgers, and then down to St. Louis University. So I had kind of just experienced as a coach's kid all the ups and downs of, as coaches, what we experience in the life of a college coach, in the pressures and the weight that goes with it, in that winning and losing is your job. And if you don't win, you get fired. And I learned that reality at a very young age, in that when I was in fifth grade, my dad was, the interim head coach for the Badgers in between Dick Bennett and Bo Ryan. And after that interim year, they let my dad go and brought Bo Ryan in. And that was kind of my first experience of this college basketball world, that the reality of it is, if you don't win at a high level, you are not going to be there long. And that was my first test of faith. And although as a fifth grader, I wasn't strong in my faith at the point, that began kind of this process of nurturing me to become closer to Christ and trust more in my faith. And I think it did prepare me as, my own coaching journey began to be able to put things in Christ's hands more and less in my own hands, and lessen the circumstances of what's coming and the result of what happens.
I gotta believe that I got to see this picture of you, like as a fifth grader, like going to school every day wearing Wisconsin Badger gear and being all about the Badgers. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, I guess they don't want my dad anymore. Sure. It's an eye-opening experience, I'm sure, and changes your perspective a little bit.
Yeah. Coaches' kids know that. It's you. People ask me, who's your favorite college team? And it's like, well, it's always been the team that my dad has coached, and that changes quickly.
Yeah.
It's hard for young kids to understand that. And it was it wasn't a crazy traumatic experience, but for a fifth grader to, have to up and leave and to move and go away from your friends, it's traumatic. It puts a mark on you.
Yeah, and I remember in your book, this is a big part of what you talk about. Again, you mentioned, I believe that you were the assistant with him at Lindenwood, and he changed jobs. Is that correct?
Yeah. So out of high school, I went to Miami of Ohio. I played there for 2 years, and then I transferred back home to St. Charles to play for my dad at Lindenwood. After playing for him, I became his graduate assistant for 2 years, and then the third year I became his assistant coach. After that third year, he got called by Tony Bennett at Virginia and offered the assistant job at Virginia. And obviously you don't turn down an offer by Tony Bennett. So he went to Virginia, and because he went to Virginia, I was out of the job at Lindenwood, and that was kind of another traumatic, and probably the most traumatic experience in my life, of not having a job, not knowing what was going to happen. I had just bought a house, just got married, just had my first child. So there was a lot that was going into that time in my life that kind of led to me really exploding in my faith and essentially being forced to surrender my entire life to God's will.
And that's yeah, and that's so traumatic. It really is, because it's you got you're supporting your wife, your kid, you got the house, and then it's all of a sudden it's like, I don't even have a job. That's one of the things when I work with individuals is I love to tell them to learn to switch your prepositions. All right. So when something happens to you, are you able to look back and say, that's something that happened to me, or is it something that happened for me? And I would love to hear your perspective on that whole situation now, and having that stretch of time where you had no job, and that trauma that came with it. And are you able to see that as something now that happened to you, or worth, something that happened for you?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's amazing, from again, we're talking from a spiritual perspective in our lives here. When when I look back on all the different things that I've experienced in my life, starting with the move from Wisconsin to St. Louis, me and my wife talk about it often, is the amount of things that happened in my life and in our lives that at the time we considered to be terrible, trials, and just not what we wanted. Now looking back on it, to see them as incredible blessings is I think that it's something that we're all going to do in the afterlife. Obviously, as you look back and you'll see the interwoven plan of God just working through your life. But I think very rarely do we take the time to just look at it right now. Okay, let me sit down and look at my life and go back through all the things that I considered bad at the time and what came from those things. And if you do that, you'll realize that every trial turned out to be a blessing. And that's, looking back on my own journey, that is 100% what it is.
Oh, I feel you, Coach. That is something that I say often. It has changed my ability to go through my day to day, because I know I have learned enough to know that I don't necessarily know what's good for me. I'm going to make plans and I'm going to do what I think is best. But if something doesn't work out, it's probably for a reason. Well, how can I use that use that for myself? I would not be here having a conversation, which I love what I do now. This podcast, the coaching profession that I do now, I would not be here having this conversation with you if I had not had a stroke and had to do all these things that I've gone through, which at the time were the worst things that, you would never wish on somebody. So, I believe that faith is so powerful for being us being able to move past those situations and see them as something that happened for us and not to us. So
yeah, it completely changes your perspective on the way you look at things. And I think that's a huge piece, is, anything that we're attacking or trying to achieve, your perspective on the journey is a huge piece for you to either keep going or to give up and throw in the towel.
I agree. I like I said, you and I are in. I read your book and I was reading it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to this guy. And that's part of why so much of what you said really resonated with me. So I'm going to take a break here. When we come back, I want to talk about Christian values in athletics. And what I mean by that is, it's so interesting. I played in the CCIW. I know what it's like. We want you, and I'm sure you want to have your athletes have those Christian values, but at times, how do you combine that with, sometimes you got to be a dog, right? Like, it's a physical, emotional, aggressive sport. And how can we, as a coach, how can you combine those things? So Take a break and we'll be right back. Coaches, you love to practice plays, drill defense, and develop physical skills. But what about mental toughness? Well, mental toughness can be drilled like any other skill. And at the Mental Metal Academy, coaches can learn how. Learn and teach mental toughness with your activities and drills. Visit the link in the show notes and enter METTLE, that's METTLE, for a special listener discount. In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experience depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where mental metal coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Metal Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives.
Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with mental mental coaching and see them excel. We are back on the Mental Metal podcast with Coach Kramer Soderberg, the head men's basketball coach for Millikin University. And he's a devout Christian and has written, a book on it. And I just want to really hear your perspective on, I don't know, I'm trying to find a funny way to phrase this, but like, how would Jesus play ball, right? Like, how does Jesus want us to do things that we're passionate about and still have that Christian mentality?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think firstly, I think there's a little bit of a misconception about who Jesus was and is. I think a lot the new age, culture and the secularism has kind of coined Jesus as some like tree hugging hippie who, loves everybody and all that stuff. And he loves everybody, of course, but this man, as we've seen in the Gospels, is a passionate and on fire individual, and I think that combination of, yeah, we're doing everything for the glory of God, and yes, we love our neighbor as ourselves, but at the same time, we're passionate, and we run the race to win, as it says in 1 Corinthians. So I think this idea that if you're a follower of Christ, you gotta you can't be physical and you can't be tough. I think that's misconstrued. You want to be a competitor at all costs. You want to get after it. As you said in the CCIW, you got to have a little dog to you. You got to have a little edge to you. And that's good. And so I think there's a balance there, of course. But I think passionately competing to win is the way that you glorify God, as long as through that passion and competitiveness, you can have the understanding that, as we talked about earlier, no matter the outcome, God's will be done. And I think that allows you to kind of incorporate the both. That allows me to be an elite competitor on the sideline, to get after it. Yes, sometimes do I lose myself with the refs, and sometimes do I have regrets of something that I said to my players? I do. There's been times I've had to apologize to my guys for how I've acted, or apologize to my wife for how I acted and embarrassing her or whatever. That happens sometimes. We're human. But at the same time, if I can grow in my understanding that, okay, I am going to compete as hard as humanly possible to achieve the outcome that I desire, which is to win. But at the same time, understand that the ultimate result is in God's hands. And if I truly believe what I believe, in that God's plan is perfect and that trials and victories in my mind all are a path for me to go where God wants me to go, then when that result does come, whether it's a good result in my mind or a bad result, I can accept it, knowing that it's a part of his plan. And I think that's the perfect melting together and molding together of the Christian mentality and the competitiveness of especially college athletics.
No, I love that. I want to know, how do you apply all of that in a daily pursuit, like in practices? Like, how do you involve some of that mentality and turn it into that toughness that you need with your players?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think firstly we have to define what toughness is first. And I think as coaches, our players need to know like what I as a coach believe toughness is. Some coaches, might say toughness is, smashing the guy in the chest and knocking him on the ground. Yeah, I suppose that can be a form of toughness, but for me, my definition of toughness comes from Dick Bennett, which comes from my dad, and that toughness is the ability to perform at your best no matter the circumstance. So in my estimation, that's true toughness, the ability to perform at your best no matter the circumstance. So I think a lot of us think that, toughness is, jawing with a guy or, shoving a guy down when he's, talking trash or, being able to win in a fist fight, whatever. Maybe, but true toughness in my eyes is the guys who are able to perform at their highest level no matter what's going on. That's true toughness. Whether they're, they had a late bus ride and then they had classes but are able to come back to practice and be the best they can be that day. That's tough. A kid who happens to tweak his ankle and maybe the best of his ability that day isn't as high as it normally is because of the ankle, but he performs at his best no matter the circumstance of the ankle. That is toughness, and that goes so much into our mental capacity there. So I think before I can ask my kids to be tough, I have to define to them what toughness is. And when that is the definition for our guys, then I think the pursuit becomes, can I be my best? Can I be who I am, the best at that level every day, no matter what? Whether coach is on me, whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, whether I'm making shots or missing shots, whether I'm getting the playing time I want or I'm not, can I perform at my best no matter what's going on? And the kids who do that, in my opinion, are the toughest kids.
I love your definition. I think it's fantastic because I agree. I think that mental toughness sometimes, because you'll hear it commentators and so I can remember just recently it was in the NBA playoffs and Charles Barkley was complaining about the Lakers and he was talking about how they weren't doing enough and they needed to go out there and just start smashing people. Mm-hmm. And, of course that's typical Charles Barkley answer, but I thought, yeah, but no, right? Like they're also not working very hard or not playing very hard. And it's a different mentality sometimes, especially when you're going it the way you're going with it, which I love. It's right with my mentality of what mental toughness is. So then after you teach them, here's what that is, how do you use being a guy like you in strong faith and like you are, how do you start to develop that in players? You're like, I'm assuming like they don't all come to you with that kind of toughness, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think number one thing is you have to challenge them on a daily basis to be the best they can be. And as you see behind me, this is what I call my program blueprint. But our goal at Millikin each year is fill your cup. And you mentioned my book, Fill Your Cup for Christ. But the story behind that is my dad, gave a talk at a youth camp that I was at when I was in 5th grade or 6th grade. And he gave the analogy of 3 different size cups, one a big, 64-ounce guzzler, one a 12-ounce drinking glass, and one a little Dixie cup. And he said, it is irrelevant how much potential you have or how big your cup is. All that matters is you fill your cup to the top each day. And if you do that, you're a success, right? And I think nowadays, so many kids and adults deem success based on the results of the outcome. Did I get that job promotion? Do I make enough money? Do I have a big enough house, car? Is my girlfriend pretty enough? That is their idea of success. And in my opinion, that's just wrong. That success is getting the most out of the potential you've been given every day in everything you do. So the first thing that I have to do with my players is rewire their thinking almost of, okay, now that you're a part of this program, what does Coach Soderberg deem as success for you? What does he deem as success for you? And success in your mind might mean starting as a freshman and playing 30 minutes, but that might not be what I deem success. And I think once I rewire my players thinking of all that you have to focus on is filling your cup, whether it's a big cup or a small cup, all the way to the top every day in everything you do. When you go to class, in the weight room, in conditioning, practice, open gyms, games, no matter what it is, fill your cup to the top. And if you do that, you're a success. And once that, cultural brainwashing is removed to say, no, you're not a success unless you start, or unless you score 20 games, that doesn't define your success. You're a success if after practice today, you walk out of there and say, man, I laid it on the line. I filled my cup to the top. You're a success. Once they understand that, then I think I can push them to a level of, don't worry about the outcome. Don't worry about what's coming. Just worry about the here and now. And are you giving it everything you got to be the best you can be in every aspect of your life?
Yeah, I love that mentality, that idea. I'm sure it sparks a lot of conversations. I'm sure it's something you bring up, like, hey, and plus it also talks about potential, right? That if I remember from that story, that the guzzler, the big gulps, that's some people are born with more athletic talent and more abilities to do different things, and that's all part of it. But that doesn't mean that they get to go on easy, right? They have more responsibilities and more to fill their own cup. And I also, Coach, I remember from the book, the part that really, really, I had to laugh. After your dad gave that talk, was it you were riding home in the car, and he let you know you were a Dixie Cup? Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. The ride home, he said, Kramer, did you like my talk? I said, yeah, it was a good talk. And he said, just so you know, you're the Dixie Cup. And I think that was his way of telling me, before I realized it, you're not going to be 6'3". You're not going to be 6'4". You just don't have it in your gene pool. You're not going to be playing above the rim, but don't worry about that. He said, I know all the goals that you have. You want to start as a freshman, on the varsity in high school. You want to become player of the year in the state. You want to win a state championship. You want to play Division I basketball, all these things. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about those goals. All you worry about is filling your little cup to the top. And if you're at the end of your career, if your cup is overflowing, you're a success. And that, years down the road, I got inducted into the Lindenwood Hall of Fame after playing there. And that was my speech. That was what my speech was about. And all the accolades and stuff that I got during my playing career are nothing compared to what I'm most proud of. Is at the end of my career, I could say my little cup was filled to the top. My little cup was overflowing. And that in my estimation is a success. And if every player who ever played athletics, no matter what level, no matter how good, no matter how, whatever, if at the end of their career they can say, my cup, I filled my cup to the top, I got the most out of the potential I was given, I think that's a success. Whether you win championships, you play overseas or in the NBA, or you just play high school sports, if you fill your cup to the top, that's a success.
It's just such a powerful story. And this podcast is about helping coaches better understand some of this. And somebody listening to this may not be into the faith like you are, but what is so important to take from that story is you have that fill your cup is part of your program here, and it's part of your life. You wrote a book about it, and it's from a intentional talk demonstration that your dad gave to you, a camp that you were in fifth grade.
Yeah.
I don't care what age you are, who you're working with, what sport, what nothing. Kids are paying attention whether it appears that or not, and you have the ability to influence, and you have the ability to make a difference in a kid's life. And you don't know when that's going to be, but be intentional about what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it. I think that's what I really pick up from that conversation. To me, it's powerful.
Yeah, it's the beauty of sports, and I think, I don't know who said it, but a teacher affects this, but a coach can affect however many kids in a year. It's the joy of coaching and the reward of coaching that I'm now just beginning to realize in my young career is getting a call from a kid, after they've graduated and, Coach, I just had my first job interview and I told them about my experience and this is my goals. And I mentioned, the pillars of our program or, the goal of filling your cup, and they loved it and I got the job. Or, Coach, I'm trying to fill my cup every day as a husband and as a father. Like that stuff is eternally rewarding from a coach. Winning and losing, that comes and goes. Winning championships, great, but affecting the lives of young men, and not only affecting them for 4 years, but affecting them into their future lives. And then hopefully that affects another generation of kids like that. That's powerful stuff there. And I think as coaches, we got to always remind ourselves that this is what we're here for. This is what we're doing. And yeah, we're trying to win and lose, or we're trying to win. We're not trying to lose. But at the same time, we gotta keep perspective on what this job's all about.
No, I think it's great. I mean, there's winners and there's losers, and that's what makes it fun. It wouldn't be fun if it wasn't. So, right. But it does affect people's lives, and I understand that, and it does. So it does cross the line sometimes. It's hard to figure that out. But we're gonna take a quick break, and then I want to just really dive into just a little bit more into how you're gonna, like, how do you do this with I mean, I'm sure that you have non-believers on your team, and how do you broach that, and how do you deal with that? So yeah, we'll talk about that when we get back. The Mental Metal Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. Coaches, you love to practice plays, drill defense, and develop physical skills. But what about mental toughness? Well, mental toughness can be drilled like any other skill. And at the Mental Metal Academy, coaches can learn how. Learn and teach mental toughness with your activities and drills. Visit the link in the show notes and enter METTLE, that's METTLE, for a special listener discount. And we are back on the Mental Metal Podcast with Coach Kramer Soderberg of Millikin University, my alma mater. And we are really talking about how faith can affect mental toughness in sports. It's something that I see in a lot of my coaching practice. Is I'm not necessarily a faith-based coaching practice, but me being a very strong Christian here, and something that's really guided my life. It happens sometimes when I'm working with individuals. It comes up in the conversation. Some of them come and are very faith-based. Others aren't. And I bring up the conversation when it happens and try to lead kids just like Coach Soderberg does. And that's kind of my next question is, I know that Millikin University is not technically a Christian university at all. So I know that not everybody coming into your program is a believer and not faith-based. And I'm just curious how you use what you know, and the way you do things, and how do you handle with that?
Yeah, I've had a lot of opportunity to do different, talks in parishes and churches across, the Midwest recently. And I often get that question as, how do you incorporate your faith into your program, even though you're not at a faith-based school? And the first thing I always say is I never shove my faith down anybody's throat. I never say we're only going to recruit Christian kids, and if you're not Christian and you don't believe this, that, or the other, then you can't be a part of this team. By no means. That's absurd. But at the same time, I'm very upfront with everybody that I recruit about who I am and what's most important to me. So every kid who comes on a visit will see this sign behind me. And I'm sure you can't see it perfectly, but the bottom portion of it is called the foundation. And that foundation is built on the Bible verse Matthew 7:24. Whoever builds his house on a rock is a wise man. And I tell every recruit and their parents that come on a visit at Millikin that this is what Millikin basketball is being built on, whether seen or unseen. This is what the program's being built on, because that's what my life is built on, and that's what I'm trying to build my program on. And I'm trying to be a wise man. And I always caveat that with that being said, I never will force my players, my staff to believe what I believe. But at the same time, I'm not going to be shy about who I am and what's most important to me. And firstly, I think everybody always appreciates authenticity. I think whether you're an atheist or a Christian or a Muslim or whatever you may be, I think all people appreciate upfront authenticity, and that's what I try to be. And then after that, when I get kids in my program, I think you could ask my guys, in team meetings or in, practice, how often they've heard me talk about my faith or quote a Bible verse. And it would be very minimal, I would say. I wouldn't think that the guys could remember very many times that I do. However, what I tell people is I try to proclaim my faith to my players through the way that I live, through the day-to-day, that when my guys see me, when I come into practice, or when they come into my office to chit chat and see me, or when they see me interact with my kids or whatever it may be, I want them to say, man, Coach Sodi is different, like, why is he the way he is? Why is he so joyful? Why is he, just always uplifted? Why is, even in trials, is he positive? Like, asking them themselves those questions based on just the way I live. And then I hope that the relationships that I build with my kids, those personal relationships that grow over the 4 years, getting to know them, so on and so forth, I hope that they trust me enough that when they do go through their difficult times, their struggles, maybe they lose a family member, maybe they're dealing with mental instability, whatever it may be, that they trust me enough to want to come into my office and have some harder conversations. And once you get into those harder conversations, those are the moments kind of behind closed doors that faith will come up. And that's what I try to do as a coach, not shove it down their throats, not, proclaim it in practice, but live it out in my faith and build a strong enough relationship with my players that they feel comfortable to come into my office and have the difficult conversations when they're going through something tough. And that's what I've experienced of when the faith questions come up. And if I build up that trust and that, that close bond between my players, that's when my opportunity to proclaim the gospel comes. So,
and the thing is, going and being a college athlete, playing a sport, doing all these, like, those trials and tribulations and that adversity will happen.
For sure.
Right? Like, so it's not like, oh, if something happens, but it's always going to happen, right? Yeah. There's always going to be an opportunity for them to come talk to you, and you being there for them is a fantastic. And then, you living out what you say, practicing what you preach, and filling up your own cup, it has to help with the, how much they're going to buy into your program and your idea, which is what you're trying to do. Right. And that's fantastic.
And I think that's what all coaches are trying to do. And I've learned, from going from an assistant to a head coach, now going into my third year as a head coach, it's amazing to me. I always, as an assistant, an X and O guy, and I'm always saying, okay, what can we do X and O wise? And I tell people all the time when they ask, what's the difference between being a head coach and an assistant coach? And I said, I think so much less about X's and O's now as a head coach than I did as an assistant coach, because as a head coach, you're always thinking about the psychology behind it, the communications. What do my guys need to hear today? How can I motivate them properly? And that's why anytime you hear coaches talk, you hear culture. I got to build a winning culture. And I spend so much time thinking about what do my guys need to hear today? How can we enhance our culture? How can we grow our unity? All these things. And of course, I still got to focus on the X and O side of things. But if the culture's not strong, none of that other stuff matters. And I don't think I fully understood that as an assistant coach. And
No,
I don't think most assistant coaches fully understand it
it's
until they move chairs one seat over.
yeah. There's an expression that it's the distance between the assistant coach chair to the head coach chair is a little bit more than 18 inches.
Right.
It's and your idea about the culture again. Another one is that culture strategy is great, but culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I just think that's what I really try to get through to some coaches is like that's what this podcast is about. Is you have to figure out how to do those things, and it is worth your time to do those sort of things.
Yep.
And I will attest, Coach. I don't want to make it a tough, a touchy subject, but I did. I came there on a visit with my son, and I was taken aback just at how the word forward wasn't right, but you weren't. It was very aware of what your faith was, and it was a great visit. I loved it. Ultimately, Lane went it up somewhere else, but I was like, this. I would love to have him go there. I thought it would be fantastic, and I just love that the presence you had about it and how you were not shy about it, and I thought it was fantastic. So I will definitely, attest to.
Appreciate
what you're saying there, and it's fantastic, and I wish you obviously my alma mater, and I want you to do so well. Just a last question here, and it's open question here. I love to ask this question. What did I not ask that I should have?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say one thing that that I've tried to get across to other people that I talk to, especially in the sporting world, other coaches that I talk to. I even had my assistant coach who had worked with me for 2 years, ended up getting a head coaching job, which I was thrilled to death about him for. And before he left, he asked, what's some advice you would give to me starting as a head coach and all this. So that would kind of be the question. I would say that what question didn't I ask you? That would be the question is what advice can I give to young coaches, whether they're newly head coaches or just getting into the business and they're assistant coaches and want to grow in the business. And this is the advice that I would give. And this is kind of my mantra or, slogan for my career is the term holy indifference. Holy indifference. And I got this from a spiritual master in my kind of theological realm, but the idea behind holy indifference is similar to what we've talked about a little bit, is this idea that no matter the outcome, I am indifferent about it. And people can kind of get taken aback by that doesn't sound right. Like you shouldn't be indifferent about it. But again, it's not just indifference, it's holy indifference. Okay. And that idea that no matter the outcome, I'm comfortable with it. No matter the outcome, I'm going to trust the Lord and his plan. And when I first took over as head coach at Millikin, I felt this, which I'm sure all head coaches do, this enormous pressure of like, you have to perform, right away. If you don't win this many games in your first year, people are going to think you're the wrong guy for the job and you're going to get fired in year 4 and whatever it may be. Or, as an assistant coach, when I first got into the business, if I don't make my way up quick, if I don't move from this job to that job or whatever, then I'm not going to get where I want to go. And I promised myself when I first took over as head coach that I would approach every day with holy indifference, meaning whatever comes my way, I'm good. Whatever come my way, I'm okay with it. That doesn't mean I'm not going to compete. That doesn't mean I'm not going to put every ounce of effort into making Millikin top of the CCIW or winning championships. I'm going to attack that with passion like you can't believe. But I'm also going to approach the outcome with a handing over of my will to Christ's will, of handing over my dreams, my goals, desires, aspirations to God's will. And I think once you do that, and trust me, I'm not perfect at it by any means. I'm not the guru on holy indifference, but once you can strive to do that every day and learn to let go of the outcome and just focus on what you're doing day to day to try to achieve what you want to achieve, I think that's how you approach this crazy competitive, pressure-filled business with some peace.
I can't say enough about that term. I'm going to steal it and think about it. It's something that, because it goes right into how I started with this idea about Philippians 4:13 and how, well, we've all heard the wide receiver at the end of the game who had and the reporter's asking him or she's asking him something, and he talks about, well, the good Lord willing, I was able to make that catch and we win the Super Bowl. And it's like, I'm not sure God, had money on the game. I'm pretty sure he didn't. And he didn't, and that's not what he cares about. Right. And I think that sometimes, and and I love it anytime that an athlete praises God. I love it. But I think that it gets talked about and shown in ways that aren't necessarily faith-based. Again, it's I want anybody who wants to have belief in God and do that. I love it, but sometimes it does. I think it works against what God's trying to do sometimes. And the way you put that holy indifference, it brings so much peace to do two things. One, to go into a game and know that you give it everything you've got, but then also have the peace to be okay with the outcome. Right. And those are two very hard things for some people, some coaches, some athletes to be able to mix together and live, and be okay with. Yeah. And it's so great. I love what you're saying there. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's been a fantastic conversation. Anything else, Coach?
No, I've been thrilled to be on with you. I think it was a Holy Spirit-led conversation, which is fantastic. And I hope that those listening can, add some things to their lives and their coaching worlds. And any podcast I go on, I say I'm always available for anybody who wants to reach out to me. My email is on the Millikin Athletic website. Feel free to reach out anytime. I would love to hear from young coaches, anybody. Love to hear from anybody.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Good luck to this upcoming season. Beat those green weenies and go Big Blue.
Go Big Blue. Thanks for having me.
You got it, Coach. Yeah. In a recent study done by the NCAA, it was revealed that 31% of male athletes and a staggering 48% of female athletes experience depression or anxiety at some point. As adults, it's crucial that we address these issues and provide the necessary support systems for the athletes that we care about. And that's where mental mental coaching comes in. My student athlete coaching program is dedicated to helping young athletes develop mental toughness on and off the court. So join me at Mental Mental Coaching, and together let's empower athletes to overcome the mental obstacles and enhance their performance and lead fulfilling lives. Visit the website shown in the show notes or contact me directly to learn about the program. Invest in the mental well-being of your athletes with Mental Mental Coaching and see them excel. The Mental Mental Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today.
Welcome back to the breakdown of the interview with Coach Soderberg. You'll notice that Coach Soderberg, a passionate guy. It's a great interview. I love having interviews that are passionate and intentional and confident about what they're doing. It makes for just such a great interview. And you'll notice that Coach Soderberg builds his program around at Millikin University around, even though it's not a Christian institution, which I can't stress that enough in this case, what he's doing. I'm impressed with it. But he builds his program around the verse Matthew 7:24, which you saw behind his shoulder, and is something he talked about, but he didn't really say the verse. And the verse is, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house upon the rock. Great verse, even better song if you are currently thinking about the hand motions that go with this and are singing things about the rains coming tumbling down. Then you and I had a similar childhood, and that verse always makes me think of that. But I digress. I'm sure that Coach Soderberg chose this verse on purpose. It involves two actions: listening to the Word of God and then putting it into practice. And if you do those two things, the result was you're going to have a confident or a foundation that you can be confident in to build your house on. And in this case, we're not talking about a house, we're talking about a program, a basketball program. And I love that idea. The idea that he chose that verse because he knew it was about building a foundation, and he wanted to have a foundation for his program before he even started to build it, which is very purposeful and intentional. I believe my favorite quote from the interview was at some point, I can't even remember the question or what we were talking about, but he said, at some point, he said, it's not about the basketball. Think about this for a minute. What he's saying is that as a basketball coach who's paid to be a basketball coach at a program, at a NCAA school, his job, he believes, is not about the basketball, which means he believes it's primarily about something else. And even though he mentioned in the interview that it was a win or get fired mentality with college athletics, which it is, he still says first, it's not about the basketball. So how do you mesh those two? How do you operate like that? Because they don't necessarily mesh. And that's okay, I think, because at a lot of what Jesus asks us to do is things that don't line up with what the rest of the world wants, and that's the point. As Christians, we're supposed to do things that are different, and that means sacrifice at times. It's clear that Coach Soderberg prioritizes his relationship with God and with his players above winning. And in order to do that, and to do that, confidently, you have to have faith that God is going to lead you, lead your career, lead your life, lead your family, and that's a lot of faith. And if you read his book, which is, I would highly suggest, he talks about how that was a really a lot of trouble for him. It can be scary and it can be frustrating to have to put that much faith in God, but in my personal opinion, it's not nearly as scary or frustrating as trying to do it all on your own. We've all been there. We've all been there at some point as Christians, or if you're not a Christian, it can be frustrating sometimes trying to do everything on your own. I also love how, his attitude towards winning, and I said in the interview, I'm going to steal that line that he has, and I will. It's holy indifference, which is, there's a lot there. Coach Soderberg, he has that passion and he wants to win. If you've seen him coach, he's a good coach, and he's very passionate about winning, but there's no doubt about that. He accepts, or tries to accept, the results as they are. just Coach Soderberg's like me, like everybody else. Even if we want to do things like we think Jesus wants us to, we all fall short. That's part of the deal. I know I certainly do. But regardless, I love the idea, the holy indifference. It works so well with what I tell the athletes that I work with, Christian or not. Focus on what you can control and have confidence in yourself and your own abilities. Do your absolute best, and whatever happens, happens. Learn from the losses, learn from the mistakes, and move on. And know that whatever God has God has planned for you, it's likely more involved and more complicated than you can certainly understand at this moment. Personally, I've had I've had a lot of bad things happen to me recently, so much so that a lot of them have turned out to be good things, and it's really starting to have me question if I even know what's good for myself. Actually, I'm pretty sure that I don't understand what's good for myself. But every day, regardless of knowing that, I start every day with intention. I plan to do things as well as possible, as confident as I can, and try to be as Christ-like as I can. That's never a guarantee that things are going to go my way, and it's never a guarantee that I'm going to pull off that intention or that Christ-like attitude. But I have to try. I have to work on that. And that same goes for winning and losing in a basketball game. But instead of focusing on winning or losing, do what Coach Soderberg does whenever he talks about his idea of mental toughness. He said you have to have mental toughness is the ability to perform at your best no matter the circumstance. So if you're being guarded really tough and the officials aren't calling much, or you're injured, do your best. If you're being, like I said, if shots aren't falling, do your best. If an opponent is engaging in trash talk with you that is not Christian-like, do your best. Start with intention and continue to do your best. And not only is that a great mindset for Christians in athletics, but it's a very healthy, it's the best healthy mindset I've seen in all my athletes, is the idea that you need to compete and strive for winning and give it your 100% all the time and play with full confidence. But if you get beat, then you tip your hat to your opponent and you use it as a learning opportunity and you move forward. A couple verses that go with that. Philippians 4:6 tells us, don't worry about anything. Okay, thanks, Paul. That's real easy, but it's not easy, but don't worry about anything. And that goes for wins and losses if you are very into athletics. But just because you don't worry doesn't mean you don't work hard, and it doesn't mean you don't want to win. As I mentioned earlier, Colossians, it says we should work as though we are working for the Lord and not for human masters. Paul wrote both of those statements. Don't worry and work hard. They don't contradict each other. Basically, he is telling athletes, if he was talking to athletes, do your best and may the best man win, or woman. I think Paul would have made an excellent mental coach for athletes, just saying. Once again, thanks so much for joining me on the Mental Metal Podcast. Be sure to, if you're enjoying this, please share it, like, subscribe. I put this out to reach as many people as possible. So if you find these podcasts beneficial and you like what I'm saying, share it. You can do your part and share the word and help people out. I would really appreciate it. And be sure to patronize my sponsors. Quick Cut has been great and helping me out. And I also use the Mental Metal Academy, which is my online courses. They're a great resource for parents. And there's also one that's a great source for professional development for coaches in education. So if you're interested in some different professional development, hit me up. for the Mental Metal Academy. Until next time, Coach Matt Thomann, and this has been the Mental Metal Podcast.
Thanks again for listening to the Mental Metal Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Metal Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Metal Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Metal Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your metal.